Welcome to another episode of Customer Success Talks Real Challenges Experts Advice. This is episode number 2 of The Power of Persuasion with Christopher Phelps. Chris, thank you so much again for part number 2. How's everything over there?
My pleasure, my friend. Thanks for having me.
And with that being said, let me just recap a little bit here, Chris, because you are the US CEO of Dr. Robert Cialdini Institute, but you are also a general dentist. Plus, you wrote 2 books: Grow Your Dental Membership and also on dental marketing, which people you can see it behind Chris. So anything about that book, Chris, I will add a link for people if they're interested on learning about that. They can find it in the about section. In the first episode, people, we were talking about the 7 principles of persuasion. They are created based on a huge research years ago, which is still so important that people are still using it. And you can find them in the Robert Cialdini's book. But those 7 principles, just to recap, are reciprocity, liking, unity, social proof, authority, consistency, and scarcity. Scarcity. So that means that what we touched on the last episode was a lot of the theoretical side of things, but without having that backbone, anything that we're going to talk about today is going to be difficult to understand because it's linked to those 7 principles. But on this episode, we're going to try to keep it more tactical, and we will talk about 2 important parts of persuasion that you need to know: the pre-suasion and also the do nothing option. Plus, we will go through 2 scenarios that as customer success managers we have on our daily basis, as for example upselling and also change management. But okay, it's a lot of me talking. It has been almost 3 minutes of me talking. Let's get the expert to give their opinion about what is persuasion. So Chris, can you tell us what is persuasion and why is it important?
Yeah, definitely. So, last time we spent a good bit of time talking about those 7 principles from Dr. Cialdini and how they persuade us into a decision or down a path.
Mm-hmm.
The persuasion is all about what principles are present that you can leverage in that moment with your potential customer or your actual customer.
Okay.
But as you said, we could back it up. What if we could create a mindset in this person? Okay. A
Mm-hmm.
mindset that's going to make them more receptive to want to say yes to our request before they actually get to us. So, what persuasion is all about is leveraging the principles before the person gets to you.
Oh, wow.
Ultimately, help shape a mindset that makes whatever you're going to be talking about more favorable in that person's mind, and therefore they're more likely to say yes to that request. So, the example I like to tell people is this. So, imagine you've got a potential customer coming into your meeting with you, right? You're going to be talking about sales with them or promoting a product, whatever that is that you do. In my world, it was a dental patient, right? So maybe I have a new patient coming to my practice for the first time. Well, whether you realize it or not, that person's going to come into that meeting with you with a mindset already established. Okay.
Right.
And most of the time, that mindset, if you don't do anything to change it and recenter it back on what they value about what you're about to present to them, then the mindset they're coming in with is going to distract them from what you're going to talk about, or it directly competes with what you're talking about. The example I usually give is, let's say I got a patient coming into my office for the first time, and it's a female patient. She's new, so she gets to the office 30 minutes early to fill out her paperwork, whatever. But she just gets off the phone having a knockdown, drag out fight with her husband. Okay. We're talking tears, divorce on the horizon, not sure what's going to happen to the kids. Like, it's ugly. Okay.
Yeah. It's,
You know what? She's here for her appointment. The call's done. She cleans herself up. She comes in and she has a not bad experience. It's a good experience. Okay. But I come in now as the dentist, and now here I am talking about her dental needs. Where's her mind at right now? Is it
not
on her
with
mind
you.
at all?
Mm-hmm.
No. Where is it?
Yeah.
It's still in the car in that fight, right? That's an extreme example, but it hits the point. They're always coming in with a mindset pre-established. And most of the time, it's not going to play well with what you want to talk about. So
Mm-hmm.
if you don't do anything different to change that, then I like to say the door to yes is already shut.
Absolutely.
If it's already shut, it's unless it's a top of mind pain situation for that person, then it's hard for them to open that door back up. It's hard for you to influence that door back open. So
Mm-hmm.
in persuasion, it's all about getting them into a mindset before they get to me to keep that door to yes open. That's all. I just don't want the door shut in my face before we even start.
Are we talking about influence too? We're kind of already starting that influence.
Well, it kind of starts like this. Once you know what influence principles you want to leverage when they're with you,
Mm-hmm.
then you back it up and you ask, well, what principle or what mindset would they want to be in to be receptive to this principle? So let me give you an example. So when the book Pre-suasion, Dr. Cialdini talks about a study where people were randomly surveyed at a grocery store
Mm-hmm.
on a random day at a random time. And they asked these folks this scenario. They said, hey, sorry to bother you. I'm with a soft drink company. I've got this brand new soda. We'd love for you to try it. All we ask is that you give us your name, home address, telephone number, and email, and we'll ship you a free case of this soda. In exchange, you just tell us what you thought of it. So they were basically asking them for market research,
Yeah.
right? But to get this soda, you had to give them your personal information. Okay. And in this day of cybersecurity and
Kind of
protecting your,
scary. Yeah.
right, it's kind of scary. It's just some give your info to some stranger. So, of course, the majority of people, I think only like 14% said yes, which means the majority said, no, I'm not doing that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the natural tendency. So they thought about this. Well, what mindset do we want somebody to be in who would say yes to this kind of request?
Mm-hmm.
Really, we love mindsets where it has a yin and a yang, as they say, or a positive or a negative connotation by society. So they backed it up and they came up with a commitment question to ask them before this request happened. So now in the same grocery store on different days and different random times, as people first came into the grocery store, they asked them a simple question. Hey, quick survey question of our customers. Do you consider yourself to be an adventurous person? Yes or no?
Oh, I see.
And of
So that
course,
that translates to being open and open to challenges.
right. So
Ah.
what mindset is the person that says yes to trying a new soda? Someone who's open to trying new things. Who's
Mm-hmm.
open to new things? Someone who's adventurous, right? So they
Yeah.
tied it to a word, right? A word creates this mindset. So they ask these folks, do you consider yourself to be adventurous? Now, the interesting question is, how many people in that study said that they were adventurous people just from the
Probably
get?
a lot. We all want to be adventurous, right?
All of them, right? It's crazy. So the real question is, what are the chances or odds that every one of them was actually an adventurous person, right? So it kind of speaks back to this way our brain thinks, this kind of bias, if you will, where to answer it wants, when you get to a question like this, where the answer is perceived by a positive by society, or the opposite of that word is a negative, because if you're not adventurous, then what are you?
Mm,
You're boring.
okay. Uh-huh.
And nobody wants to be perceived as boring, right?
Mm-hmm.
So your brain instinctively starts flashing back through time, looking for one example, one instance, one time in your life, right, where you exemplified this answer. So you're thinking back to yourself, well, let me think. Well, you know what? That was that one time in college I did that adventurous thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yes. So all it needs is one piece of evidence. That's it to
Wow.
So that's why 100% said yes. So they've all done something adventurous in their mind at some point in their life. But what they didn't realize was by answering this question, they and committing to it in that moment, that's now who they are in that moment. That's their mindset. So now they go into the grocery store and a different set of researchers come up to them about 10 or 15 minutes later and ask them the same question as the first group. Hey, we're with the soft drink company. We're looking for people to help out with market research. All we need is your name, address, and home address and your phone number, and we'll send you a free case of the soda.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how many of those coming in with a adventurous mindset said yes and gave them their personal information?
Probably less, a little bit, or no?
76% of the people said yes to the soda.
Wow,
Okay.
that's still a
And
lot.
when about 14% said yes the first go round. So 14% said yes with no mindset. 76% said yes, I'll take your soda. Here's my personal information.
Ah.
And they were in the right mindset. So a significant change in people saying yes, all because they were in a mindset that made it difficult to say no when asked that request after the fact. So that's really what it's all about is what ways can we create mindsets in people before they get to our situation, and a mindset that is going to influence them to want to say yes and be susceptible to the principle of persuasion that we're going to use in that moment. And this is a good lead into what we talked about with the do nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. So now, before we get to the do nothing, that's the second piece of the puzzle. Well, how do we create this mindset?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you saw from that study, you can create mindsets by asking strategic questions of people, asking questions that create a commitment in that mind in that moment. Like, are you adventurous? Yes or no?
Mm-hmm.
But notice they asked that question before they asked them to do the soda, and it was well before. So, like in my world, what I decided to do in the dental world, and this works with most sales companies as well, is I like to ask my customer a potential question in a new patient questionnaire, or in your case, could be a new customer survey or questionnaire.
Yeah.
Before they get to you, they should fill this out. And the question I like to ask them is this: when it comes to your oral health, or you could say, when it comes to what you value
Mm-hmm.
about this thing, industry, whatever you're talking about. So when it comes to what you value, do you prefer to be reactive, meaning you'll let it go, even though it may cost you more time, money, and pain because you waited? Or would you prefer to be more proactive, meaning you want to avoid things costing you more time, money, and pain? Choose.
They will go with the proactive, of course.
The majority of people, right, that would prefer to not let bad things happen to them and
Mhm.
prefer to be proactive, even if their past behavior has shown that they've been reactive,
Yeah.
right? So when you use that word prefer, it's kind of interesting versus me saying, which are you? Had I said, which are you, you would have looked to the past for your answer. And that doesn't necessarily get you the response you're looking for. What I
Mm-hmm.
want to do is say, hey, forget the past. Let's just close the door on that. Who do you want to be? Let's paint a new future. Who would you prefer to be moving forward? That's somebody I can work with now, right? Well, I have been this, but I would prefer to be this instead. Okay.
So
Now we're on
you
the same.
So you have to picture first what you want before you ask those questions for the persuasion. And
Page.
this is, there are the first thing that comes to my mind to execute this is either through surveys, or if you have your Calendly link, you can create different meetings with different type of questions that you can share with your customer based on what is going to be the meeting about. And then you can ask those strategic questions if you are going to jump into a renewal, if you're going to jump into a difficult conversation about a bad experience, or maybe there's a feature that they have been asking is not going to be possible to implement. Like maybe that would be a way to use the persuasion with the tools that we use a lot, which is Calendly. Just create different slots depending on the scenario. And Chris, like when we start coordinating about today's episode, and you already mentioned this before, you touch on the do nothing option. And it sounds so interesting and actually funny because we can easily implement the do nothing option.
Yeah.
Can you jump into what does that mean, how it works?
Yes. So it goes into one of the principles we talk about, this thing called contrast. And contrast, this phenomenon, isn't a principle of persuasion per se, but it's as powerful. And
Mm-hmm.
contrast is what we use to compare things, right? It shapes our perspective. How do you know if something is expensive or inexpensive? Well, doesn't it just depend on what you compare it to?
Mm-hmm.
Which is why for some people an item may be inexpensive versus other people it may be expensive. Or if I say, is 5 foot 2 inches tall or short?
Well,
Right. It
yeah.
depends. Okay. If you're 4 foot 2, it's tall. If you're 6 foot 2, it's short. Right. So it all depends on what you're comparing it to.
Mm-hmm.
What you compare things to is what creates real value, positive or negative for people. Okay.
Okay.
So in knowing this contrast thing, whatever option you tell to someone, they're always going to compare it to the wants they're spending in their life. Okay. Their desires, their motivations. Um, and when we let them control that comparison, your product, your service to these other wants in their life, usually we lose in that scenario. They choose those other things, especially
Mm-hmm.
in my world, because I'm talking about dental needs, right? What they need as a person, but what do people prefer to spend their money on? And maybe you're talking about what they need, but would they prefer to spend money on what they need, on what or what they want,
What
right?
they need.
What that most people prefer to spend it on what they want.
Okay. So I'm not okay. I'm different then.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. The only time need trumps want for the majority of people is when it's life or death, like
Okay.
serious implications. Okay. But what we're trying to do is influence a need to be a want in that person's mind. So
Mm,
we have to control this comparison thing. So if you give them an option or a number, a price you throw at them, they compare that to something else in their life, where usually there's other things they value more, trump what you're talking about. So they choose other things. What we present in the influence world is we need to back this up and anchor them to something else first. Typically, this is going to be a higher valued thing. So in my world, there when people choose to do nothing when it comes to their oral health, let's say, there's some kind of consequence to that, right? There's a cost, maybe not today, but most dental conditions don't get better magically over time. You
right.
know, bacteria in the mouth don't stop eating away at the tooth. So usually there's some kind of tangible consequence and a cost into what they value, a cost to the additional work and or product services they'll need later to fix this, or in my world, the treatment they're going to need. And there's going to be an additional cost to do all of this that's more expensive than today. So I start all of my presentations with option one is always do nothing, but here's what's going to happen.
And
And
they
so I
start
go right
creating a
into the
picture.
yeah, and so I go right into the scarcity effect of the consequence of what they're going to lose by doing nothing. In what they the consequence of what the cost and what they value, the additional treatment they're going to need, or products and services down the road, and the total money cost it's going to cost them. So, for instance, I could start out with you by saying, "Hey, you need a crown for your tooth, right? This little protective covering over the top of it, and that's going to cost $1,200." Now, as soon as I say that, you're going to hear 1,200 and compare that to the wants in your life and go, "Oh crap, 1,200. Well, that's more than my car payment. That's more than my house payment.
Yeah.
Doesn't hurt right now. I can't afford that." And
Yep.
so you mentally shut me down without saying a word, right? You've already closed the door. Versus if I said, "Hey, Byron, look at this. Your first option, here's your x-rays, here's the decay. Of course, your first option is do nothing. But did you know that in a few months, this is going to get worse and you're going to need a root canal built up in a crown because of the infection that happens? And that's going to take multiple visits in the office and it's going to cost you around $3,600. Or you could choose to not let that happen and we could do a crown today for significantly less. Which would you prefer?
The first option is it's
On the
cheaper long
right,
term.
or
Hmm.
this option today? Your
Hmm.
choice. And of course, you're going to go, wow, 3,600, don't want that. Okay, 1,200, that's more manageable, right? So automatically it keeps the door to yes open. But go back to persuasion now. So now I'm using scarcity as my main principle. That's what the do nothing principle is. That what's the cost of doing nothing to them?
Hmm.
What they value and physical cost or additional things they'll have to do, effort, visits, what have you. So the mindset I want somebody to be into coming into this situation is somebody that's going to be sensitive to missing out or loss.
Hmm.
So you see why that proactive mindset is so powerful now? Because by definition, what does a proactive person want to avoid?
The problem from happening.
The problem from happening and it costing them. So when I
Mhm.
say that doing nothing is going to cause that, that's contrary to their mindset. Versus the crown now allows them to be proactive. Well, which of those two would they prefer to choose now? I'll go with the proactive option.
Absolutely. Do nothing option will apply a lot in the renewal part of things. Maybe we'll apply in other ones, but that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
It does, and it works in multiple levels because by letting them know that they can do nothing and or go elsewhere even,
Mm-hmm.
um, you're building trust with that person. Okay, that builds authority. When you share a weakness in your
Uh-huh.
case, or you share a negative about why they should say yes to you early on in your conversation, then that builds trust with them. Okay, because what that shows is you're not trying to hide the elephant in the room. You're starting with it. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you're transparent, and transparency means trust.
Trust. Mm-hmm.
So automatically they're like, "Well, I appreciate you saying that." At the same time, by giving them a choice, do nothing or stay with me and continue the service. Okay, you're giving them a voluntary choice, making them more committed to you. That's that consistency thing we talked about last time when you give them that choice. Uh, Lastly, you can give them the do nothing option, but then make sure you anchor them to that consequence of what that do nothing is going to mean to them in their time, money, effort, resources, visits, whatever that means. There's going to be some kind of additional cost in time, money, effort, or something else that they value that you need to put in there and embed in that message to make them go, yes, I could do that, but you're right. Why would I do that when this is working for me? I see the return. They've told me the return on investment. And yeah, I should just stay true.
What words or what keywords do you have in your arsenal that you will share with us today?
Well, one of my favorite words is the word
Okay.
but. So I like to present the pros and cons of things, or the number one is good news and bad news, right? Because everybody can relate to good news and bad news. At the same time, I like to build trust with people, so I'm not afraid of hiding the bad news from them. I'm going to start with the bad news. Okay. So let's go back to that example. Okay, your first option is to do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the good news is it costs you nothing, but the bad news is here's what it's actually going to cost you down the road in time, money, pain, etc. Right? Or you could do this other option. Okay. Now the bad news about this option is that yes, you have to spend money on it. But the good news about this option is,
Mm.
and you go and you say some kind of positive to negate the negative.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's repeat that. So, all right, the first option is to do nothing. Now, the good news about this option is it costs you nothing, but the bad news about this is here's the cost.
But.
Now, let's go to your second option. Now, the bad news about this option is it costs you money,
Mm-hmm.
but the good news about it is whatever positive thing you want to say about it to negate it. So, why do I like the word but? Because studies show that people don't remember what you said before the word but. All they remember is what you said after the word but and how they felt. So again, remember, they're not experts in what you're talking about, but
Yeah.
they need something to cling to. So but is one of those words that wakes the brain up. But implies, wait a minute, pay attention, something important's coming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's why it puts more emphasis on what comes after the word but. So in that scenario, that framework I just gave you of presenting, what do they remember? What comes after the but in the anchor? Right. So I said the good news, but the bad news. So they remember the bad news about that anchor. It's going to cost me something. Now let's flip it down. So the ideal option, I said, the bad news is it's going to cost you money.
Mm-hmm.
But the good news is, so what came after the but was the good thing about it.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So now I'm no expert, but that first thing I remember was bad. The second option, the ideal option in this case, I remember was good. Well, which do you think I might prefer for myself now if I had to choose? Bad or good?
Good.
Good. So you're this is what I mean by by not only what we say to people is important, but the order in which you say things, the sequence can set the stage for a yes or no. And by using this sequence and framework, we're influencing them now to want your ideal product or service that you presented and
So.
avoid
Mhm.
the negative one.
Let me practice this, Chris. Let me practice this with everyone here. I'm gonna pursue you, everyone, to do the following. We're talking about persuasion, and we're tackling the highlight of them, of what is persuasion and the seven principles and all the options given. You can stay with this, or you can go to the link. But I'm using or. How can I use but to guide people to actually go to the link and see the discount?
Well, you'd have to tell them your first option is what? The first option is to do
The first
nothing.
option is do nothing. Yeah, like just stay with these episodes.
Your first option is do nothing, stay with these episodes, but what's the cost? Or is there a cost? What's the good thing?
The good thing is that for a discount, they're gonna learn even more.
So we know there's a discount, right? So you can say your first option is to do nothing. Do it the way you've always been doing it. But the odds are good you're going to be missing out on a lot more yeses. And how much is that going to cost you down the road because less people say yes? Put a number to it right now in your mind.
It's gonna cost $800.
Okay. It's a lot, right?
Yeah.
That's just the start. How many now let's compound 800 times. How many times are you going to have that same conversation moving forward?
Oh
Right?
well.
So be a compounding issue long term. Or your second option is to not do that, right? Instead, you can pick up this discounted option and start to learn how to better learn how to influence and persuade. Now, of course, the bad news about it is it's not free. But
Yeah,
the good news about it is you're going to make a significant return on this probably in the first time you use it and every time you use it moving forward. It's a skill you'll learn for life. So, which would you prefer? Keep doing it the way
definitely.
you've always been doing it, or pay a little bit of money and learn how to better influence and persuade everybody else you have an interaction with moving forward?
Chris, let's jump into the last part of the episode, which is the two scenarios that we as customer success managers we go through sometimes, or not sometimes, actually a lot of times. And there are many, right? But we I choose these two because I think that they happen a lot. And
Mhm.
one is to how to overcome resistance, aka change management.
Yeah.
Like for example, scenario here is that there's a new feature coming and we need to let know our customers how to use the feature and the benefit of it. How can we start creating that persuasion into them to see the value of that?
Well, if they're in that moment with you now, right, meaning
Mm-hmm.
we're having this conversation about trying to get them to renew, then it's about getting a commitment first. So, for instance, what commitment or in essence a mindset do we want them to be in this moment, right? So we by asking questions we create commitments. Asking questions before they get to us creates mindsets of that commitment. Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying if we didn't get to them before and they're now literally sitting here in front of us, and I know I'm going to ask them to renew, I got to back it up and think to myself, what question would they say yes to that is starting to lead them down the path of choosing this renewal? So I might say, or this new feature, this new
Oh yeah,
product.
new feature exactly.
I might say something like, "Hey, so I've noticed, looking at your history, that whenever we've had a new feature in the past, that you've adapted it and you've purchased it and used it. Have you found a benefit from adding those new features? From, or maybe if they haven't done yours, you say, "Hey, have you ever had a product, let's say an iPhone, that they can
Mm-hmm.
relate to? And are you still on your iPhone 1? Are you on the iPhone 10 or 15 or whatever we are now? Like, have you saw a value in the new features that came out with that product and therefore bought it? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I always get the new iPhone because I love all. Okay. Why is that? So reinforce the commitment. Oh, because of the X, Y, Z. Okay. Well, then you're going to get real excited because, the next question, have you found value in our current product or service? Ideally, they should say yes.
Yeah, ideally, yeah.
Well, much like the iPhone now, our product has a brand new feature and service. And let me go through that for you. And here's the additional benefits you can expect to feature. Just like the latest iPhone, we know you're going to get value from this.
Yeah.
Is that of interest to you? Yes. Okay. So again, once you got them committed that they have done something like this before,
Mm-hmm.
tried a new product or feature, even better if it's been your product or feature, If they've committed to that now in this moment, then why wouldn't they say yes to trying your new product and feature?
I think that also it's important to tie that conversation towards success that they have had before.
Definitely.
I think that that will definitely create a big picture of demonstrating those small success or those quick wins and tie them towards those goals, because then once you do what all the steps that you just said, Chris, by asking those questions, guiding them towards the yes, and then just the final part I will say is at, uh, um, linking those yes towards these are the success and this is what you're looking for and this is the why behind that. I think that the possibility increases.
Definitely. So first you got to get them committed to having done something like this in the past or seen
Mm-hmm.
value of something like this in the past. The next commitment is that they've had a similar experience with your product.
Mm.
And then the third thing is, well, then of course, if you've been had great experiences with other new products and services, you find value in ours, then why wouldn't you find value in our new product or service? Yeah, it's about getting people to really commit, whatever that idea in this moment is, right? Like proactive or reactive. I don't really care which one you choose. Just commit to one, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm asking for. Commit to one. Let me know who you are in this moment. What do you stand for? What do you value? Right. And then I can paint the paths clearly for you.
So because the next scenario is about upselling, but I think that everything that we have said so far can still also be applied exactly to upselling. There's nothing will change, right? When it comes to upselling, how do you
Correct.
upsell your customers, for example?
Yeah. So again, it depends on like getting that commitment is key. Have you found value in this, or why did you decide to choose this? But it's also contrast. Like, so I know stores like the Men's Warehouse and Jose Banks and like high-end retail stores, suits for men and whatnot, are
Mm-hmm.
like masters of the upsell. Okay.
Yeah.
And how that works is because once you've committed to say buying a suit for $300 or $400, if you're all in for that, why wouldn't you spend an extra 30 bucks for a nice pair of socks or a shirt that matches that you don't already have? Well, and if I got the shirt, why wouldn't you spend another $15 on the tie or 30 bucks? And
Yeah.
you know, holy crap, I got half the thing now. And you know what? I don't have any good shoes. So why not spend another 100 bucks on the shoes? So each one leads to the next, to
Mm-hmm.
painting out the whole picture of, well, yeah, I've got now I need the whole damn outfit. Okay, fine. Let's get the whole outfit.
Like if you're already in the store and you already came to the store, why not?
Exactly. You're here. You want to look good for this event. That's why they ask you, what is your event? What do
Uh-huh.
you hope this outfit's going to do for you? Like they're trying to anchor you to this experience and this perception you want others to view you as, right? And if you want others to perceive you as looking your best, looking authoritative, looking successful, then what? You're going to stop at the suit and use the cheap
Mm-hmm.
shirt? No, you're going to use our shirt. What are you going to stop and not have a tie? Crap, I need a tie.
Yeah.
Oh, you said
Yeah,
you wanted
leaves
to
you with no
look
options.
right. It's like I thought you wanted to look your best. Why not have these shoes? How shiny are yours? Dang, not as shiny as this. Okay. All right. Maybe you need the cufflinks, right? You can just see it just keeps going
I
until
I
you hit your perception of what you anchored yourself to.
I laugh because it's interesting how many times we have been pursued towards
Pursued,
something. Pursued,
persuaded.
persuasive. We have been persuasive over towards something and not even noticing it now, right?
Yeah.
So, and yesterday I was thinking as well that I think that even if we haven't done a research about persuasion or we haven't gone in through any course, we have at some point in our life naturally somehow tried to influence and pursue someone. So that skill is already there. It might be hidden, or we might not be conscious about it.
Definitely. Yeah, no.
Chris-
Any interaction with another person, there's always at least one of the persuasion principles available for you to tap into.
Oh,
Uh, Oftentimes there's multiples, but
mhm,
at a minimum, you can always count on one to be there. The challenge is that you don't know which one it is. It's not the same one every time.
true.
So kind of level one of learning influence and persuasion and getting educated is to be the detective to sniff out what principle is here in this moment that I could tap into. And then not only detecting it, but then now knowing how to apply it. Well, how can I tap into it? What can I
Mhm.
do? And then using those ethical questions we said last time as our filter. And now I can tap into, I can bring it to the surface. I can tap into it, but I should feel confident using it because objectively, I'm using it in an ethical way for the
You-
betterment of me and that other person.
You're consciously educated of what are those principles, and that's part of the course that you're offering as well in Dr. Cialdini Institute. Chris, thank you very much for these two episodes full of knowledge and full of things that, like we just said, we have been using, but maybe we have never been conscious enough to know what they are and what they mean and how they affect, and also how they have been used towards us with us without knowing. So the to start wrapping up today's episode, there's just one last question that I ask to each guest, and the idea is to learn from your mistakes. So the simple question is the following: can you give us a scenario when you fucked up, and what did you learn from it?
Ooh, a specific scenario where I messed up. Well, yes. So this relates back to a patient that was in my chair, and I was presenting the topic of my first book, How to Grow
Mm,
Your Dental Membership Plans. And this idea is this plan is for people who don't have dental insurance. Okay, that's why I created it. It's like a Costco style model of preventative care, so people can more affordably get their teeth cleanings and preventative care that they need. Okay, as I noticed a trend here in the States that when people retired, they lost their medical insurance when they retired from their job. And so they felt like because of the scarcity of time and they only had a
absolutely.
certain amount of money they had saved up that was ticking away each month, they
Mhm.
hold on to it tighter because of that scarcity, right? So they didn't buy dental insurance on their own because they felt like it was too expensive. Well, then there was this barrier that, well, I don't have insurance, so I can't go to the dentist unless it hurts or I'm in pain. So they put themselves into a reactive mode by default. When
Mm,
in fact, if they just came and did the preventative stuff, their cleanings and whatnot, they prevent bigger issues down the road. But again, that's not how they saw it. So my solution to this problem, this barrier, was the membership plan. So here it's basically it's an affordable way to get your two cleanings a year, your x-rays, exams by the dentist, and you get a discount off our treatment, just like if you had insurance. So my mistake was, influencing and trying to persuade a patient to buy this plan who didn't have insurance. And the mistake I made was I assumed that every one of my patients would want to save and would value this discount. So I told the patient, I was like, "Hey, Mrs. Jones, yeah, I know you don't have insurance, right?" She was like, "No, I don't actually." And I said, "Oh, hey, you're going to love this new thing I created just for people like you. Why pay full price? Why would you pay $700 for dental insurance when for $1 a day, right, you can get all the same preventative care you've been getting from us? So saving over what you're paying us, and you get a 10% discount off everything that we would do for you treatment wise. Sounds
sounds like a
amazing."
good scenario, yeah.
Right. And of course, she looked me right in the eye and she said, straight up, she said, "What's your problem?" I was like, "What do you mean?"
What?
She goes, "Yeah." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "What? What do you mean?" She goes, "Do you think I'm poor or something?" She's like, "I don't need your discounts." She goes, "I can afford to come here. I made my money. I saved. I can afford to be a patient here. I don't need your discounts." Like she was generally offended by me assuming that she needed a deal and
Okay.
wanted one. Okay. So the mistake you make oftentimes is, especially with influence and persuading, that you assume you know what that patient values and believes. Don't assume. Ask. Get
Don't
them to
assume.
ask better questions. Get them to tell you what they value and commit to it. Ideally, before they get to you, like I do in my proactive reactive new patient questionnaire. Okay. Then nobody's guessing. And it becomes a whole lot easier to persuade them and influence them down a path once you know what they truly value instead of you guessing what they value. Because I assumed I knew what she valued and I walked us both down the wrong path. And I almost lost her as a patient as a result.
Wow. Don't assume, ask questions. And I think sometimes we are scared of asking questions as well, because we want to avoid, or at least I used to want to avoid some scenarios that are not the easiest ones. So that's
Sure.
why I was scared of asking specific questions. But now I understand that actually people like to be asked questions because that means that I want to help and I want to give the best possible solution. So never assume, ask. Thank you very much, Chris, for your time. And this is it. This is it. Now it's just time for everyone to digest all the good information you gave out. And everyone, remember, keep growing, keep learning, and let's keep improving the world of customer success. Until next time.
Thank you.